A voyage around the moon must be made in 2 phases. A rocket ship taking off from the Earth's surface will use almost all the fuel it can carry just to attain a speed great enough to balance the pull of gravity.
By the early 1950s, Wernher von Braun was rapidly becoming one of the world's most recognizable scientists and a genuine celebrity in America. He testified before Congress and met privately with President Eisenhower. Von Braun hammered home his case. America now had the rocket power to launch satellites into orbit. Eisenhower decided to wait. He was leery of opening another front in the already tense Cold War with the Soviet Union. Von Braun was disappointed but not surprised. He'd been dealing with government officials all his professional life. This time around, he decided to go directly to the public.
Von Braun recognized that he needed to do everything he possibly could to get the American public on board to see this enormous undertaking through.
In a series of magazine articles co-authored with friend and fellow scientist Willy Ley and illustrated by Chesley Bonestell, von Braun laid out his case. The future was right before us if we wanted it. Massive rockets, space stations, and trips to the moon, Mars, and beyond. Around the same time, filmmaker Walt Disney was deep in the planning stage for a new amusement park. Disneyland was designed to help promote his studio's movies and would feature areas dedicated to adventure, fantasy, the American frontier, and the world of tomorrow. With no real plans in place for the Tomorrowland segment of either his theme park or accompanying television series, Disney went looking for ideas. The first person he wanted to meet was Wernher von Braun. It was the perfect choice. Von Braun introduced Disney to the very real future of rockets that could explore the cosmos. Together, they would build a place for people to play and learn. Their television specials would be a key inspiration for kids of the 1950s and beyond.
51 minutes later and halfway around the world, the rocket is coasted to its maximum altitude of 1,075 miles. Its speed has diminished to 14,770 miles per hour. The navigator must now take a bearing on 2 fixed stars. He will line up the ship for the adaptation maneuver, which will drive it into a circular orbit around the Earth.
That was probably the biggest single coup we ever made, was getting the attention of Walt Disney. Because that was, for me, that's where I learned everything about space, was from watching those wonderful Walt Disney specials, in which you saw a moon rocket being built by this nice little German fellow named von Braun. I didn't know anything about von Braun, didn't much care. I just knew someone was actually trying to realize the dream I'd been laughed at all my childhood for even talking about it.
Walt Disney's Tomorrowland specials showed every kid in North America exactly where they were going and how we were going to get there.
We are now picking up the unknown side of the moon. Bill, give me an altitude reading. Okay.
They also made it clear who would be leading the charge.
When the day arrives for construction to begin, the thousands of parts for the space station will be transported to the orbit by our multi-stage rockets.
Von Braun's fame didn't sit well with many who found it impossible to overlook or forgive his past. This was like old times for von Braun. In the midst of World War II, he'd been arrested by the Nazis for speculating about space. When congratulated by the SS for the success of the V-2 attacks on England, von Braun replied, "Yes, but we're hitting the wrong planet."
Well, it's a terrible sort of dichotomy in his character, really, because you've got this amazing accomplishment, probably considered by many to be the single greatest accomplishment of the 20th century, the landing of men on the moon for peaceful purposes and the exploration of another world. But this whole historical triumph is waylaid by this legacy of what happened in World War II.
Ah, Werner von Braun, whose autobiography was called I Aim for the Stars, and everyone immediately responded, in London.
Gather round while I sing you of Werner von Braun, a man whose allegiance is ruled by expedience. Call him a Nazi, he won't even frown. Nazi schmatzi, says Werner von Braun. Don't say that he's hypocritical, say rather that he's apolitical. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Werner von Braun. Some have harsh words for this man of renown, but some think our attitude should be one of gratitude, like the widows and cripples in old London town, who owe their large pensions to Werner von Braun.
From one back to the other. Of course, almost none of that mattered, because what really made von Braun in North America and got on the cover of Time happened very, very far away, early one October morning in 1957. And it was this. The Soviets, with their R-7 rocket, launched this tiny little ball into orbit that beeped its way around the planet. I heard it on my uncle's Heathkit radio. And all of a sudden we were in the space age, and Eisenhower and his administration were pretty embarrassed. So the very first thing they did is called up and said, okay, brilliant idea, let's launch something. Let's get something into orbit really, really quickly. Forgetting that von Braun had been telling them for years he could do it with the rockets he already had available. Eisenhower, perhaps wisely, didn't really want von Braun doing this. He didn't want the head of the German rocket program to be the guy who would get America into space. So they handed it off to the Navy's Vanguard project, which didn't work out very well. It blew up on the pad, publicly and on live TV. Then von Braun got his shot. He took that Redstone rocket that he had evolved from the V2, called it a Jupiter actually, slightly larger, and launched the Explorer-1 satellite in January of 1958. The Explorer had already only one worthwhile instrument on it. It had a Geiger counter developed by Dr. Van Allen, which actually discovered the radiation belts that circle the Earth, which were named after him, the Van Allen belts. It was the first great scientific discovery of the space age, at least here in the States. And von Braun was now on his way, helped among other things by finally a president, President Kennedy, who came along in 1960-61, who was in fact obsessed about space. He thought this was a fantastic concept. He really liked the competition, the challenge aspects of it. And suddenly, von Braun had carte blanche. Kennedy was fascinated by this. He wanted to get somebody in space as quickly as possible. The X-15 program was curtailed, and Project Mercury was put into place. There are a lot of political reasons why that happened, and we can talk about that in the Q&A if you want. But for now, let's just push